husband keeps talking about a daughter we don't have. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. My husband has always wanted kids. We're just, I don't know. I feel like we're just not old enough yet. We got married young, fresh out of high school. He works with his dad as an electrician, and I'm still in college studying to become a teacher. Needless to say, it's not kids that I have a problem with. I just want to make sure we're both in a position to raise our children the right way. He knew that when I agreed to marry him. He seemed supportive of it at first. I told him very clearly that I wanted to wait until we were at least 30. For the first 2 years, it seemed like everything was fine. I didn't know just how agitated he was getting with my refusal to get off birth control. Every time he asked, it was like a stab to my heart. We started arguing a bit. We'd bicker about little things like any other couple, but when it came to kids, it turned into full-blown screaming matches. I can take care of a baby. You can still do school. We'll find a good daycare. It became clear that he just wasn't seeing my vision. Part of me regretted getting married so abruptly, so young. Our brains hadn't even fully developed yet. But then again, we did get married for a reason. We loved each other. We'd been friends since middle school. We got married after dating for 2 years. We were each other's homes. He just wasn't so hell-bent on being a father back then. I don't know what changed, but when it did, it was just downhill from there. The arguments persisted, but so did I. So did we. I never wanted to turn my back on him. I just wanted us to make it through. It seemed like all my prayers had been answered when the arguments just stopped one day. I soon came to realize that that wasn't exactly the blessing I thought that it was. I remember he started going out more, staying at work late. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find that I was alone in our bed. Of course, my already stressed brain jumped to the worst conclusion. I didn't want to distrust him, but he wasn't making trust easy. When he saw me, it was just all sunshine and rainbows, but when he was gone, it was like he was dead. No texts, no calls, nothing. At first, I was happy for the space, but as it went on, I started getting more and more unnerved. When he wasn't out or at work, he spent a lot of time in our shed. He'd spend hours out there. I'd see him carrying food out there. It became strictly off limits to me. Anytime he saw me even come close to the building, he'd stop me and guide me back into the house. This is around the time I became convinced that he had lost his mind. He started talking about a daughter that I know we didn't have. Roxy is a little fussy today. You keep working on your schoolwork. I'll take care of our baby. I need to go out and get some food for Roxy. Anytime he mentioned it, all I could do was laugh awkwardly and ask him what the hell he was talking about. Every time, his answer was nearly the exact same. You know what I'm talking about. He'd just smile and play it off like he wasn't acting like a complete lunatic. What scares me, though, is I'm starting to think maybe he's not a lunatic. I swear it's like sometimes I can hear cries coming from the shed. Soft, weak little cries that are just audible enough for my guard to come up. I found a pair of little pink socks in our dryer last week. I always seem to find empty cans of baby formula hidden beneath the trash in our trash can. When I really started grilling him about his behavior, the arguments came back. He'd scream at me, call me horrible, awful names that I could have never imagined would have escaped his lips. But the part that concerns me the most is that he's chained up the door to our shed. He's spray painted over the windows. He keeps the key with him at all times. The crying has been getting louder and louder. I don't know if I'm too afraid to accept what's happening, or if this is all just a nightmare that I can't wake up from. All I know is that now he doesn't just talk about wanting a kid. He tells me he wants another.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and this is Haunted Threads After Dark, where I read spooky, scary stories, paranormal or otherwise. If it's spooky and scary, I want to read it to you. So this is a story about the Appalachian Mountains, and I've never been there, but it sounds terrifying. So, well, the stories, the scary stories. I'm sure it's a beautiful area, but the scary stories sound terrifying. Let me say that, so I don't hurt anyone's feelings. So I'm sure it's beautiful over there. I did go to Georgia once, and I went to South Carolina. Is that the same thing? Is that near there? I think it's near there, but I didn't go to the mountains. So anyhow, let's get started. This is called The Rule You Never Break in the Mountains. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, not way out off the grid or anything, but rural enough that you knew your neighbors and you knew the woods behind your house better than the roads in town. My mama used to say all kinds of stuff about the mountains at night, and most of it I took as old people rules. Don't whistle after dark. Don't follow a voice if you can't see who it belongs to. If something calls your name from the tree line and it sounds almost right, go inside and lock the door. I thought it was just mountain folklore. I mean, honestly though, just in general, if I heard that, that would kind of terrify me a little bit. So yeah, I would follow those rules. When I was 19, my cousin and I were driving back from a bonfire at maybe 1 a.m. We weren't drunk. I want to be clear about that because that's always what people jump to first. We were tired though. It was one of those roads that cuts between old woods and drop off on one side. Those roads are terrifying. I don't like those. They scare me so bad. No streetlights, just your headlights and whatever your brain starts inventing in the dark. My cousin was driving. We had the windows cracked because his truck's AC sucked. And about halfway back, we both heard somebody yell my name from the woods on my side of the truck. Not scream, just call it like they knew me. It sounded enough like my brother that my stupid thought was, why would he be out here? My cousin looked at me and said, was that Eli? And before I even answered, so I know I didn't imagine it, he heard the same thing. Then it said my name again, a little farther up the road this time, like whatever it was had moved without us hearing it move. My cousin rolled the window up immediately and said, don't say anything. That should have been enough. It should have. But I was 19 and trying to act tougher than I felt. So I said, just under my breath, who's there? The woods went dead silent. I mean dead. No bugs, no tree frogs, nothing. You don't realize how loud the mountains are at night until all of it cuts out at once. My cousin stepped on the gas. I remember laughing a little because I was nervous. Yeah, I would be too. And right then, from directly behind the truck, like right on the tailgate, something yelled my name again. Not my brother's voice this time. Same cadence, same rhythm, but lower, rougher, almost wet sounding. And my cousin started praying out loud. Yeah, that's what you do. Which he does not do. He is not that guy. We got to my house and both sat there for a second before getting out. And the porch light was on and I could see my mom asleep in her recliner through the living room window. Normal, safe, everything fine. I almost convinced myself right then that we just scared ourselves. Then my cousin grabbed my arm and pointed back at the truck. There were handprints all over the tailgate. Not muddy, not bloody, just darker than the paint. Like somebody with cold hands had been slapping and dragging their palms all across it. They were too long. That's what I remember. The palms looked narrow and the fingers looked too long. And my mom said we were probably brushed against some wet branches, but my cousin didn't even argue with her. He just left. And for the next week, I kept hearing somebody walking behind the house at night. Slow and steady steps in the leaves. My bedroom was on the back side facing the woods. And around 2 or 3, every morning, I'd wake up and hear something circling the house. Once, sometimes twice, never fast. Like it was going slowly on purpose. I knew it had time. Then it started calling me. Always from the woods. Always just beyond where I could see with the porch light. Sometimes it sounded like my brother. Once it sounded like my mom. Once it sounded exactly like my cousin, which made no sense because he was at college by then. And it never said anything except my name at first. I made the mistake one night of looking out. I didn't go outside, but I pulled the curtain back. I was so angry and just tired and wanted it to just be some idiot messing with me. There was a shape standing at the edge of the tree line, too tall, but not in a dramatic monster way, just tall enough that it felt wrong. Against the trees, I couldn't see a face. I could see shoulders and arms and the suggestion of a head, probably. And I knew somehow it was looking right at me. Then, in my mother's voice, it said, "You already answered me." I moved out 2 months later. Yeah, I would too. Not dealing with that crap. My mom still lives in that house and swears nothing like that has ever happened to her. But she also nailed a little iron horseshoe over the back door after I left. And she had never done that before in her life. The part I've never gotten over is this. About a year later, my cousin finally admitted that when I first answered it from the truck, he heard something answer me back from his side too. It said, almost. Yeah. No, thank you. No, no. See, maybe I've just heard too many stories about this, but if someone is calling your name and you don't know who they are and it sounds a little off, or you don't see them or whatever, I mean, just in general, being an old person or not, that just sounds like good sense to go inside and just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. I mean, or the whistling. I mean, if somebody was whistling, oh my gosh, if I thought I was alone in the forest and all of a sudden someone started whistling and it's dark, no, I would think a serial, you know what, is coming to come get me. But anyway, I hope that you liked this story. If you have your own stories and your own experiences that you would like to share with me, please do so up in my Gmail account. It's hauntedthreadsafterdark@gmail.com. And I would love to give it a voice, give your story a voice. So with that said, I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you have an amazing night. I hope you have an amazing week. And I will see you tomorrow. Now, be safe and have a good night or day.
Let me tell you what I saw in the Appalachian Mountains. Welcome back to Scary Stories with Vic. Let's go ahead and jump right in about this story of the Appalachian Mountains, because I know you guys love that topic right now. I found this on Reddit, so let's dive in. Let me tell you what I saw in the Appalachian Mountains. Hello all. Originally, I'm from West Virginia. I move around between the Appalachian and the Midwest some as a kid. Between the ages of 10 and 13, I lived in rural Kentucky in the foothills of one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet. I lived with my dad and my grams. We lived in what we call a holler. Think of it like a cul-de-sac in between a set of foothills. We lived in the middle of the neighborhood with nothing but family on both sides. No one lived across from us or behind us because of the foothills. When I moved in, my grams had some rules I had to follow. At the time, I chalked them up to hillbilly stranger danger. There were things like don't mess around with the wild animals, don't go out into the woods alone. Then they got a little weird. Don't whistle. If you hear your name, don't answer and do not go to it. And if you see someone in the woods you might know, no you didn't, just come home. This experience happened in August when I was 11. My dad and I had mowed a path through the tall grass and berry bushes to the left of the double wide we lived in. We camped out there a lot because it was close enough that we could check on Grams. Now, when you're in the woods, things are louder than you think. You have animal life, bugs chattering, wind through the trees and grass. There was a stream that ran along the road you could easily hear. That night, we added the campfire to that list. My dad decided to go back up to the house about a quarter mile to get more beer and to check on Grams. Before he left, he told me not to mess with the fire. After a few minutes of watching the fire, things started to get quiet, like real quiet. The wind had all but stopped. Bug and animal sounds were all gone, and the stream sounded like it was miles away. I was getting uncomfortable even though I've been left at the campground before like this. Then I started to smell and taste it. It was on the back of my throat out of nowhere, this awful metal tang. After a few more moments of dread, my dad came back. He was mad right away, said he could smell burning metal coming up the trail. He accused me of tossing beer cans in the fire. I told him I didn't, and even pointed to the fire to prove it. He said there was a storm coming in and we needed to get back home, and he let it go. We left the tent and started our way back. So it's pitch black, lightly raining, and other than the dim lights from the house windows, there's nothing. I'm eating watermelon as one does in August in the mountains when the first clap of lightning hits. Everything is as bright as it can be, and the second passes, it's black as pitch. Next clap of lightning comes, and that's when I kind of see it. On the porch, past the yard, over the stream, past the road, and the ditches on either side, just past the first line of trees, I could see the metal. I'm not really sure what I saw, so I just kind of stay still. It's a few moments before the lightning hits again. The figure is now closer, standing side by side to the trees. Then it's back again. I'm standing now, not sure what to do. It's been 20 years to this day, and I've tried but could never fully describe what I saw. This thing's head wasn't proportioned to its body. Ooh! The arms were too long and the torso didn't fit right. It was like if you asked a blind person to draw what a person looked like. It just didn't look correct. Once the lightning hit again, the thing is standing in the middle of the road. Not wanting to see this thing get any closer, I go inside. My Grams is doing dishes and asks why I'm inside. I tell her I think I saw something. She almost immediately gets my dad on his feet, telling him to shut and lock all the windows and doors. My dad, vaguely drunk, obeys. That night, I sleep with her. The next day, we discover the tent door is torn off. It didn't look like an animal. Things weren't cut or shredded, but it looked like someone took and pulled it apart. My uncle, who lived a mile or so, had all 8 chickens unalived. Heads gone. No. The next few weeks, all the kids had to wait for the bus with an adult. My dad had to be late for work for almost 3 weeks. Anytime I tried to talk about it, I just had the subject changed. I just figured I was a kid and it wasn't important or real. It wasn't until years later I finally understood. I was in my early 20s. Some cousins were in town for Halloween. As I was telling the story, my aunt got irate with me, saying, "Don't you tell them that. Don't you put that evil on them." After I couldn't help but think back to all the times I tried to talk about it and how I was shunned. My kid mind not realizing it wasn't as simple as the subject change, but then actively shushing me. Once I started dipping my toes in Reddit, I realized there was a name for this effing thing. The Goat Man. What bothers me the most is how to this day I couldn't describe any feature, nor have I ever tasted that awful burning metal taste. So friends, if you ever find yourself in the foothills of Kentucky, please remember my Grams rules. Grams is right. You always listen to Grams. They always gonna know something. Some commenter said, it's called a jinn, as in ghost. They have animal legs, but the top part of their bodies are like human bodies. They live in places like the ocean, desert, and mountains. You're not supposed to talk to them. You have to ignore that they are around you. And the only reason you felt their existence is because after sunset, their children come to play, and us as humans have to be indoors during that time. Let's look up the Goat Man, Appalachia. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. No thanks. The Goat Man. No thanks. If I would have seen that in real life, I think I would shit my pants. I'm still affirming that I am never going to be in the woods in Appalachia. Well, that was a good read for Story Times, Scary Story Times with Vic. I appreciate all the love and the followers. I love you guys so much. We are continuously growing, so keep liking, commenting, and sharing, repost these videos so we can get some really good scary stories in my email. If you'd like to send your own in, you can send it to scarystories.withvic@gmail.com. Hope you guys sleep good tonight.
Check this out, y'all. I got a late night true story for y'all. Now, back in 2001, my sister used to stay on 53rd and Winchester, and she got 7 kids. She got 4 boys and 3 girls. Now, at the time, me and my wife, well, she wasn't my wife at the time. She was just my girlfriend. We were still teenagers. We didn't even have kids yet. Her kids used to like to go everywhere with us. They even would follow us to the stores, the park, the show. Anywhere we went, they wanted to go with us. So this particular day, we was going downtown to Navy Pier, and we decided to take them, and we was taking them to Navy Pier Beach. So, we take the 55th Street bus to the Red Line, and the Red Line, downtown. So once we get over to the beach, it's a decent day. Everybody outside, we get over, get dressed to get in the water and stuff. And we in the water, my nephew and them playing, my niece and them playing, my wife, we all in the water playing. And as we looking around, you could see CPD like gathering up like a lot. Now, this is not unusual because it's downtown Chicago. CPD definitely be down that deep sometime, but it was the way they was moving and looking. So they started evacuating the beach, telling everybody they got to leave the beach. So me and my nephew, Lil Floyd, we in the water. We out a little further than everybody else. So my nephew he say, look, he like, what's that? In the water, it looked like maybe a toupee or a wig or something floating in the water. But we getting out of the water. Man, I'm looking because it looked like the toupee or the hair, whatever, is getting bigger. So after a couple of more like probably 15 seconds, you see like a forehead. And like you see this part, but it looked like gray, like. And we coming out of the water, and now everybody out there on the beach noticing this. Everybody, not just us, everybody out there that day. Man, this dude came walking out of the water. Now, this is not unusual for people. The lights you see behind me right there, Lakeshore Drive, it's a walkway right there. People have jumped in that water and they'll climb back up and all that. That's not unusual for people to do that. Some people have even went down and never came back up. But what made this weird is he didn't come from over by the wall. He came from like the middle of the water. And long as he was down there, and like my nephew was saying, like, what was that? And he was like, man, I don't know nobody. Like, it's probably people that can hold their breath for a long time, but man, that wasn't even a thing. This dude looked as slimy and gray, right? Like his clothes looked like they was leather, but I don't think they really was. I think it's from the water. He was just wet, but he looked at really soggy looking, and he had like a goth look, like the black nails and all that. And, he wasn't saying nothing. Everybody just staring at him. He just came like just walking out of the water. Like, I'm like, wow. He didn't look at nobody. He just kept going. So now we evacuating the beach. Everybody leaving. Now we don't even know what's going on. We don't even know what's going on. But at first we thought they was just evacuating the beach, like maybe it was something in the water or something was going on. But then we noticed that they was evacuating the entire downtown area. They're evacuating the entire downtown area. So they evacuating everything from down there, like all the buildings, restaurants, everything. The L's was like crowded and stuff. So now we trying to figure out like, all right, now what's going on? Now I don't want to say it because I don't know if they'll flag my page for it, but it was the year 2001. Everybody know what happened, and it wasn't Chicago. Y'all know what city it was. I don't want to mention it, in airplanes, but that was going on. And I guess they thinking that something might happen here, so they evacuate. So once we caught wind of that, I'm really trying to hurry up and get from down there, because I'm like, man, I hope not. But yeah, that was a real crazy day. And it's crazy how that dude come walking out of the water, then we see that they're evacuating everything, then that happened. So yeah, that was a crazy day back in 2001, man. It was crazy. It was real chaotic. But yeah, we was able to get back everybody, we made it home safely or whatever. But I was just sitting up like thinking about that, like, man, that's crazy. I forgot all about that day. But yeah, that's what happened. Follow, comment, share, subscribe for more stories.
I wanted to talk more about the paranormal activity that I grew up with. I was in the kitchen and I heard the bathroom door open, which there's a bathroom door in the kitchen. The kitchen leads to the bathroom. And I figured it was my mom because she was the only one that was home at the time. I was baking something, I think is what I was doing, and I had asked a question about it. I think if something was done, and she responded, and then I grabbed it and turned around to show her, and she was not there. She was not standing there. And the bathroom door was shut, which I had heard it open, so I don't know, had to have shut. So I opened the bathroom door, and she's not there. And then so the bathroom has a double door. One leads to the kitchen and the other one leads to the room. And I open the room and she's laying there and asleep in bed. So I wake her up and I'm like, hey, were you just in the, I was just talking to you in the kitchen. Were you not just in there? And she's like, no, I've been sleeping. Like, what are you talking about? So I tell her what happens, and it's a type of thing where they just didn't want to hear about it, didn't want to talk about it, anything like that. And I understand, but I just couldn't do that. I paid a lot of attention to it, and that's probably why it, attached to me or whatever. And I also was just mentally not well back when I was a teenager. So I think it definitely fed off of the negativity surrounding me. And I think that's why it was kind of following me around, because I would go other places, other friends' houses, and some friends did say that, you know, they had some activity before I came, but while I was there, it was just, I always experienced something. I went over to my friend's house to help her babysit her cousin, and he was about 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. The way her house was built is like you walk in, you're in the living room, and then you go through like a big opening thing, and then there's the kitchen, but then there's like a den. So you can see from the living room, you can see the den, the kitchen. He was in the den playing, and we were sitting in the living room, and he came running in crying and saying the skeleton face was scaring him. So we went in there looking for a mask or something that was skeleton, and we were like, well, where is it at? And he just kept pointing to the corner saying, there it is, the skeleton. We calmed him down and just kept telling him that it wasn't there, you know, it might just be your imagination or something. So he kind of forgot about it, got over it. We went into the kitchen and he stayed in the den. He finally calmed down. And you can see into the den from the kitchen. Like you can see the living room, the den, and then in the back of the den is where a room is, and then the side of the den is a room and a bathroom. So I see that the den light goes off, and of course the kid starts screaming and crying, and he runs in, and he's talking about the skeleton face again, like, the skeleton face is scaring me, can you please tell him to go away? And I told him not to turn the light off if he's scared, and he said, I didn't turn the light off. So obviously now me and my friend are freaking out because this kid is seeing something that is terrifying him. So while she finished up in the kitchen, I went and I sat with him in the living room, and we were watching TV. And like I said, you can see the den from the living room, and you can see the kitchen. And then we heard this big crash, so we all run in there, and there is a fireplace type thing in there, and there was stuff all on the mantle. It was all on the floor. We called her mom to come home, and we stayed out on the porch for about 30 minutes until her mom got back home.
This photo was taken inside of my old home. We lived in that house for about 20 years, and I raised my only daughter there. Years ago, she had her best friend over for a slumber party. I remember wanting to get a quick photo of them, so I had them pose and I snapped the picture. Years later, I looked back at this photo and I noticed this demonic figure behind them. It's worth mentioning that my daughter grew up seeing a quote, angry shadow, and would never want to be left alone inside of our house. The house always had a heavy feel to it, and I would notice small things, such as misplaced items, cabinets opening on their own, the sounds of footsteps when nobody else was home, and objects falling over, seemingly on their own. I truly believe that this picture captured whatever entity was living among us all those years. A friend of mine works at a restaurant where every night before closing, the staff has to send photo evidence showing that everything has been cleaned and put back in its proper place. One night, after finishing all of her closing duties, she took the usual photos and sent them in without thinking much of it. It wasn't until she looked back at one of the pictures that she noticed something strange, something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. My family and I took this photo during a trip to a river in San Agustin, Guadalajara. It was supposed to be a normal family picture, taken to remember the day, and no one noticed anything unusual at the time. Later, my mom showed the photo to one of her friends. After looking at it for a moment, her friend asked, "Who's the person standing all the way in the back?" That's when we looked more closely and realized there appeared to be somebody in the background that none of us can explain.
Never mess with a Ouija board. When I was 15, Paranormal Activity had just came out. My friend and I decided to try the Ouija board. We spoke to this guy named Frank, and I remember he used to say messed up things like, "My mom is standing behind you and she doesn't like you. I'll overdose on pills." Just weird messed up things. But my friend and I both thought we were both messing with each other, trying to freak each other out. A few weeks later, I was sleeping in bed. I had a shelf above my headboard that had my graduation teddy bear from primary school sitting on top. The teddy has sat there for years without being moved. And there was a dresser with a mirror at the end of my bed. I woke up to the teddy falling on top of my head, and when I looked up, I was looking directly into my mirror. There I saw a girl brushing her hair in front of my dresser. I rubbed my eyes numerously, and instead of her disappearing, she became more clear. But the more I stared, it was like I was looking at myself when I was younger, like 6 or 7 years old, as she had thick auburn hair but was wearing a very old-style type of nightgown. Soon I realized it wasn't. I hid under the covers, and after checking numerous times to see if she was gone, she finally disappeared. This fully freaked me out. Anyway, we stopped doing the board and did other things normal teenagers do. I never told anyone about what I saw besides a few friends, but I put it down that I was just seeing things and was still dreaming. Fast forward 11 years, I'm now 26. I picked up my sister and was driving her home when she randomly starts talking about when my friend and I used to play the board. She's like, "Josie," which is our other sister, "and I swear you brought something into the house." I shrug and I'm like, "Why do you think that?" And she's like, "We used to wake up seeing a girl brushing her hair in front of us." I slammed on the brakes. And she's like, "Yeah, she didn't say or do anything, just brush her hair." And then I fessed up that I saw her too, but I thought I was dreaming. Anyway, we both haven't seen her for many years, which I consider lucky because I don't want anything in the house. But I must admit, it does still freak me out and I really don't want to see her again. Moral of the story, don't mess with Ouija boards. You may invite something in that you do not want in your house.
If you're from Saudi Arabia and you're watching this right now, you might want to stay. Because there's an old story that's been passed around for years. And the people who claim it happened say one mistake changed a man's life forever. Years ago, a man was driving alone through a remote desert road in Saudi Arabia. It was well after midnight. No houses, no lights, just miles of empty desert. Then he spotted someone standing on the side of the road. An old man wearing white clothes who had been completely still. It was almost as if his body itself was motionless. The driver slowed down and asked if he needed help. The old man never answered. He simply pointed toward an abandoned stone building in the distance. Against his better judgment, the driver walked inside. The place was silent until he heard whispering. At first he thought it was the wind, but then the whispers started saying his name. He turned around, nobody. He rushed back outside, and to his surprise, the old man was gone, disappeared. Also, his car was missing as well. Now in this case, I know what you guys are thinking. The old man scammed him and did a runner with his car. But keep listening. Hours later, another driver found him wandering through the desert barefoot. He kept repeating the same sentence over and over. I answered the wrong voice. His family later said his personality had completely changed. He would wake up screaming, talk to people who weren't there, and refuse to enter that part of the desert again. To this day, some locals still say if you ever hear your name whispered in the middle of a desert, don't answer the voice that calls you. Guys, I know I've been slacking. I haven't been posting for the past 2 to 3 days, but look, we're back on track now and that's all that matters. So save this and rewatch it at 3 AM for its full effect.
Hello, I have a story time for you. However, this story time is different from the Mermaid series. We're talking about the lost souls of Washington Park. So come on, my babies. It's story. Boom, boom, it's story time. Boom, paranormal Chicago activity with Kaji. And y'all gonna have to forgive my surroundings because I'm outside in Washington Park at a baseball game. Bear with the noise, please. What is so special about Washington Park that it has lost souls? It was one of the sites, golly, that was a home run. Oh, nope. No, he caught that motherfucker. Oh, God. I am so sorry. I'm at a baseball game. I'm going to try to focus. Washington Park is special because it was one of the homes of the World Fair in Chicago. You see this whole stretch from literally the lakefront all the way back to Western. This is, I think, over 10 miles worth of land that they literally had nothing but museums, exhibitions, pop-up buildings and houses to show off all of their inventions. If you're ever in Chicago on the south side, go down 55th from Cottage Grove all the way west to Western. You will see that there is a giant strip of a park that just runs straight down the street. I'm trying to show you right here, but it really don't do it no justice just how big Washington Park really is. Because this was one of the locations of the World Fair, it's literally full with all types of paranormal activity. There are people in this area who would tell you that they hear like arguments outside, shootouts, or like street noise in the middle of the night when there's literally nothing there. And the reason why is because the land is active from all the shit that happened during the World Fair. The World Fair was basically a giant showcase exhibition where people could come out and be like, hey, I invented this, come and look at it. And that's low-key a problem because it's a whole lot of people out here inventing stuff. One of the main focal points of the World Fair in Chicago was showing off the machinery that was being built or could possibly be built that would help build buildings and cars and everything else under the damn sun. The World Fair in Chicago was also geared around trying to show off how to build different types of architecture. So these people who invented machinery to mix up certain type of compounds and chemicals literally erected buildings just to be like, hey, look, if you come and fund my company, I can then start producing things like this on a mass scale. Don't you want to be a part of it? These buildings from the World Fair were literally not meant to be here permanently. One of those main examples, well, a few of the main examples are actually all of the museums that are downtown. Those are World Fair buildings. Prime example, the Field Museum in downtown Chicago. That building literally was like taken apart piece by piece and put back together with real materials, because during the World Fair they built a lot of things out of just straight up plaster. No bones, no concrete, no wood, no nothing, just straight up plaster, because it was supposed to be a, hey, look what I can build, and then it's gonna go away. But that building was so iconic that they literally kept it and just replaced all the bullshit parts with actual real building material. We all know that OSHA was not a thing back then, so safety was not at the tippity top of anybody's priority list. There was hundreds, if not thousands, of men and women who put in the work to build these locations and also died because, again, safety was not a priority. Add in the fact that majority of the people who were actually building these buildings for the World Fair were actually people that were like indentured servants or slaves. Yeah, it's trauma loaded in this ground, honey. There are people who live around Washington Park who literally will hear people screaming in the middle of the night, sound like gunfights, or just like regular street noise, but there's absolutely nothing outside. And that's because it's from the souls that was lost during the World Fair time. I had a friend who lived directly on 55th and Winchester, right? And one night I was literally woken up like scared out of my sleep because I heard this woman screaming bloody murder. All I heard was, no, don't take my husband, don't take my son, please stop doing it. I literally thought that somebody was being kidnapped, murdered, unalived, every damn thing, okay? I break hell out of my friend's bedroom, run to the front room window because I'm trying to see what the hell is going on. My friend's room is back by the kitchen, right? So I'm having to run all the way through the apartment. Before I can get past the dining room, her grandma stepped out of her room and she snatched me up quick as hell. This woman is outside screaming bloody murder. Girl, why is you holding me back? Why we not going outside to help? Her grandma says with a level of calmness that to this day still chills my bones. Baby, it's a ghost. She ain't alive. Don't listen. It's a huh? It's a who? What? What you say? She said, listen, baby. The building next door to us was actually a slave house ran by the Chicago Police Department. She said, baby, let me tell you something about the Chicago police. Way back in the day during the World Fair, there was people who was coming over as immigrants. The police would actually go to where those immigrants were coming into the city in plain clothes, and they would tell those immigrants that they had work for them. They would then take all of the immigrants' identifying information, literally snatch them up, put them in a van or a paddy wagon, bring them over to these buildings and lock them in the buildings. The only time that they let those Polish and Irish people out was when they was going to build for the World Fair. She said, baby, when I was a little girl, I would hear those police doing all kind of unhumane things to those people, but our black ass could never help them. She said, baby, and we couldn't help them because we black. What we gonna do? We couldn't go out there and help them against the police because then we'll be in the same shoes. We couldn't go and call the police and tell the police on the police because the police is the biggest gang in the whole damn world. So what were we to do? The only thing we can do is after the police finish doing what they was doing to them people, go over and take care of them, help them, nurture them, nature them, give them food, give them water, tend to their wounds. And that shit broke my heart. As soon as she finished telling me that story, you could literally hear multiple voices screaming through the walls. Why are you doing this? Let us free. Please, someone help. In Irish, Polish, and English. The whole night I cried. I could not stop crying. I didn't get no sleep. I felt like I was suffocating. Like I could not breathe in this apartment. I had to get the fuck out. So I go out on the back porch. A lady is standing there with a baby. But she ain't no normal lady. She looked just like this with flaming red hair. She's holding a baby, bouncing it, that's screaming at the top of his lungs. I looked at her, she looked at me, and she said, young miss, please take my child. They coming for me next. My spirit said, girl, take that damn baby. When I tell you I reached out and I literally felt the weight of a child in my hands, it scared the fuck out of me. I told her I'll protect her baby. And then she just dissipated into the ether. I went back in the house, I laid down, and I was finally able to go back to sleep. When I woke up, there was an old teddy bear in my arms that I had never seen before. Quite literally, this bear. When my friend grandma came in that room and seen me with that bear, she said, oh, you made a deal with the lady next door. You have to take care of this bear from now on. Baby, when I tell you I had that bear until I was 16 years old, it literally disappeared the day after my mother died. When I told my grandma about it, she told me that the bear was there to protect me just as much as I was there to protect the bear. I got a whole lot of stories about Washington Park, honey. They coming soon.
This is a story of the peeping wife found on Reddit. My wife Lynn and I have been together for 6 years and married for 11 months now. Our entire history together has been very normal, and never once have I noticed any weird behaviors or red flags. I can't stress enough how out of character this whole thing is for her. Lynn is very kind, intelligent, and thoughtful. She always has been the no-nonsense type of person. Being childish or trying to scare me is not something she would normally do. She doesn't even like watching horror movies. When we first started dating, she agreed to watch The Shining with me because she knew how much I loved horror, but she was so scared that she didn't even make it halfway through the movie before we had to turn it off. She isn't into anything creepy and has never been into pranks. It is not her cup of tea, and that's fine. But that's what was so strange about this entire encounter. It's just so unlike her. I should also add that she never had any mental health issues as far as I'm aware, and it does not run in her family. I know some people are able to hide their mental health problems, but in the 6 years we've been together, I think I'd have seen some sort of sign. 2 months ago, I was in the kitchen making myself some coffee before work. I was running a bit late that morning and knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Dunkin' Donuts for my usual morning fix. I took a sip of my coffee as I hurried down the hall towards the front door when I happened to notice Lynn peeking at me from around the corner ahead of me. I could only see her eyes and a strand of her long dark hair hanging against the wall. The rest of her body was concealed behind a corner. I nearly spilled my coffee when I saw her. I did burn the shit out of my lips, though. "Geez, Lynn," I said, wiping a few drops of coffee from my pants. "You scared the shit out of me." She immediately popped out of view like a little kid who had been caught. I heard her scurry off towards the living room, and by the time I got to the front door, she was out of sight. It was really weird and just totally out of character for her, like I said. But I also found it kind of funny that she was being more playful and a little less serious. I shouted that I loved her and called her a weirdo. As I shut the door behind me, I heard her laughing. Her behavior was a bit odd, but it certainly wasn't something to call a priest over. I forgot about it by lunch, and by the time I got home, she was her normal self. I didn't bring it up, and neither did she, and life went on. The next incident happened 3 days later. It was around 2 a.m., and I had woken up to get a drink. I was standing at the kitchen island, a jug of OJ in hand, when I felt a strong feeling that I was being watched. For whatever reason, I looked down at the floor and saw my wife's smiling face staring back at me. She was peeking at me from the other side of the island, staring up at me with wide, unblinking eyes and grinning like the Cheshire Cat. I screamed, I'll admit it, not out of irritation, but out of fear. For some reason, at that moment, I was scared. At the sound of my scream, Lynn scuttled backwards out of view, her hands and feet smacking the tile floor as she hurried out of the kitchen, on all fours. I didn't run after her or even yell after her. I just stood there, frozen, in shock, wondering what the fuck had possessed her to do that. At the sound of my scream, Lynn scuttled backwards out of view, her hands and feet smacking the tile floor as she hurried out of the kitchen, on all fours. I didn't run after her or even yell after her. I just stood there, frozen, in shock, wondering what the fuck had possessed her to do that. It took me a little longer than I'd like to admit to go back upstairs, but eventually I did. When I got to our bedroom, Lynn was lying on her side, asleep, or at least pretending to be. I stood there for a while watching her breathing to be sure she was really asleep. I had the feeling she might jump out at me the moment I got into bed, but she didn't. I climbed into bed and she didn't even move. Her breathing was soft and deep, and I was starting to wonder if I had dreamt the entire thing. The next morning, I waited for her to come down for coffee, and after handing her a mug and kissing her cheek, I decided to ask her about it. "What was that about last night?" I asked, keeping my tone light so I didn't offend or embarrass her. She frowned over her cup of coffee, shaking her head like she had no clue what I was referring to. "You were peeking at me again, from over there," I said, pointing to the spot on the floor by the kitchen island. She followed my gaze, and when she looked back at me, she burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that I couldn't help but to join her. "You creep me the fuck out sometimes. You know that?" I said. She giggled and set her cup on the counter and wrapped her arms around my neck. "You creep me out all the time, so I guess we're even," she teased. We said our goodbyes and left for work. As I drove, I kept thinking about how creepy it had been, seeing her grinning at me from behind the island like that. The sounds her hands made on the floor as she crawled away. I told myself she was just trying to be silly, just trying to join me in my love of all things horror. It's not like I was afraid of her, but it still didn't sit right with me. I started seeing her peeking at me more and more. Sometimes she'd be peeking out from behind the couch or the living room curtains. Once, she even managed to get inside her grandmother's old trunk that sits at the foot of our bed. I might not have even known where she was at had the trunk's old hinges not given her away. She had the lid propped up just enough so that only half of her face peeked through. She'd been grinning like an excited toddler. It was unnerving. I didn't even know what to say to her. All I could do was stare. When I finally found my voice, I asked her why on earth was she doing this. She didn't answer, but she had slowly closed the lid, shutting herself inside the trunk. I just walked away feeling disturbed. I didn't understand why she was doing it, but it clearly made her happy. I just hoped she would get tired of this game quickly. Lynn didn't peek at me for the next 2 weeks. I started to think she was done with her weird little pranks, and I was relieved. We were watching a show on Netflix one night, and I jokingly said that I hadn't seen her peeking at me lately, and that she must have given up on her spy game. She looked up at me, and with a small smile, she said, "Maybe I've just gotten better at it." Lynn didn't peek at me for the next 2 weeks. I started to think she was done with her weird little pranks, and I was relieved. We were watching a show on Netflix one night, and I jokingly said that I hadn't seen her peeking at me lately, and that she must have given up on her spy game. She looked up at me, and with a small smile, she said, "Maybe I've just gotten better at it." I didn't say anything, but I wondered whether or not she was joking. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. Was she still peeking at me when I wasn't looking and I just hadn't noticed? And if so, what the hell was she getting out of this? I started to feel paranoid, constantly checking whether she was watching from around the corner or behind a door. I was jumpy whenever I was home, and she wasn't in full view of me. I felt stupid and honestly a little crazy. But after a few weeks without another incident, I began to relax. I stopped checking behind furniture and walls and told myself it was just a bad memory. Then, a few days ago, things got much worse. Lynn left to go to a friend's, and I lounged on the couch and played a couple games on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., I hopped in the shower, and as I was washing the soap from my hair, I felt that awful feeling that I was being watched. I slowly opened my eyes and almost had a fucking heart attack. Lynn was peeking from behind the shower curtain. Her entire head was stretched into the shower, leaving just her body outside. Her long dark hair hung against the curtain, the ends dripping with water. Her mouth hung open in a terrible grin, eyes wide and red as if she hadn't blinked in a while. I screamed and jumped back against the wall. She didn't move, nor did her smile waver. Her makeup ran down her cheeks in 2 black streaks. She looked giddy and completely deranged. I was fucking terrified. We stood like that for a few moments, and neither of us saying a word. Finally, after what felt like forever, she slowly pulled her head back out of the shower, and I watched her blurry figure through the curtain as she moved backwards towards the bathroom door. A second later, the bathroom door slammed shut hard enough to rattle the mirror. I screamed again and jumped out of the shower to lock the door. I stayed inside the bathroom for over an hour. Maybe I overreacted to some of you, but joke or not, I was not going to put up with this crazy shit anymore. That's what I kept telling myself as I paced in front of the bathroom, stopping to listen at the door every few minutes. Suddenly, I heard a muffled sound, and I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, straining to listen. I couldn't hear anything, but I envisioned Lynn standing on the other side of the door, giggling at her joke. I felt a surge of anger. I was beyond pissed at being made to feel scared in my own home, and made to hide in the bathroom for an hour. All for what? Some joke? If it was a joke, it was an awful one. "What the fuck, Lynn?" I snapped. "This shit is getting really fucking annoying." I waited for her to apologize or to call me a jerk, but instead I heard a faint moan. So quiet, I wondered if I heard it at all. And then, complete silence. "Lynn?" I called out, not able to even hide the shakiness in my voice. I got no response, just my own heavy breathing. "I swear to God, just fucking stop it," I yelled, pounding my fist on the floor. I waited for her to cuss me out, something I would expect from me talking to her like that. I never have ever screamed at her before, but there was nothing, just the occasional drip from the shower head. I won't deny that I was scared, too afraid to open the damn door and face my own wife. I waited for another 30 minutes or so, which felt like a fucking lifetime when you're scared. Finally, I decided I wasn't going to spend the night hiding in my own bathroom. So I got down on my knees and peered under the door. I almost expected to see her face peeking back at me, but thankfully I didn't. I could see straight down the hallway to the top of the stairs, but no Lynn. I didn't know if I should be happy about that or not. I looked down for a few minutes, waiting to see her head pop over the top step, but it never came. I stood up, my hand hovering over the door, and mentally prepared myself to open it. I slowly turned the lock with shaky fingers and was about to yank it open when I heard a sound that still makes me feel nauseous when I think about it. A moan, louder than before, but this time I was able to tell just where it was coming from. I turned my head from the closet door, and in slow motion, I locked eyes on my wife, who was peeking out at me from the slight gap. Her eyes were still wide as ever, and her mouth was hanging open in the most grotesque, gaping smile I'd ever seen. I didn't even scream. I was too scared for even that. Her hands were clasped to her chest, body trembling with sheer delight, as if she could barely contain her excitement. A short, raspy moan bubbled up from her throat, deep and raw, sending a shiver through my entire body. Somehow, I found the ability to pull the bathroom door open and ran as fast as I could all the way down the hallway, snagging my keys and phone from the table in the living room before running outside to my car.
So listen to me.
I turned my head from the closet door, and in slow motion, I locked eyes on my wife, who was peeking out at me from the slight gap. Her eyes were still wide as ever, and her mouth was hanging open in the most grotesque, gaping smile I'd ever seen. I didn't even scream. I was too scared for even that. Her hands were clasped to her chest, body trembling with sheer delight, as if she could barely contain her excitement. A short, raspy moan bubbled up from her throat, deep and raw, sending a shiver through my entire body. Somehow, I found the ability to pull the bathroom door open and ran as fast as I could all the way down the hallway, snagging my keys and phone from the table in the living room before running outside to my car. I could still hear her shrill laughter behind me. I didn't hear her getting closer. I didn't bother shutting the front door. I drove away from the house faster than I legally should have, shivering the entire time, either from fear or cold, maybe a little bit of both. I hadn't grabbed a coat or even a pair of shoes. I was still in my boxers, and my hair was still damp. I drove straight to my brother Chris's house, about 40 minutes away, ignoring any and every call and text. I didn't check my phone until I was safely parked in my brother's driveway. Lynn had called 4 times and sent a flurry of texts, all wondering where I'd gone and why I left, like that. I threw my phone at the dash in a rage, furious at her nonchalant attitude. My brother and his wife were surprised to see me, especially dressed in just a pair of boxers, but told me to stay as long as I needed. Chris lent me some clothes and asked me what happened. I told him Lynn and I had a fight, but I didn't get into the details. I didn't want him to think I was overreacting, leaving my wife over a prank, even if it was a strange one. I mean, hadn't I encouraged her for years to lighten up instead of being so serious all the time? I had wanted her to relax and loosen up, but this was definitely not what I'd had in mind. I tried to sleep on their sofa, but my brain wouldn't let me sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lynn's face staring at me from inside the closet. Knowing she'd been there with me the entire time made my skin crawl. She'd never left the fucking bathroom at all. Instead, she slipped inside the closet and slammed the bathroom door shut to fool me. The mere thought of going back home gave me anxiety. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Chris ended up giving me a sleeping pill, so I was able to get a little rest. My sleep was filled with terrible dreams, all of Lynn's smiling face. I woke up just as the sun started to rise. My sore body ached from the sofa, and I felt drained. I knew I'd have to call Lynn at some point, but I didn't know what to say to her. I wouldn't be going home unless she told me she would never do any more creepy shit. I just wanted my wife back. Her normal, serious self never looked so good to me. I was contemplating calling her and telling her that. When that familiar feeling came over me, I was being watched. I was staring at the ceiling, my heart in my throat. I didn't want to look away, but the longer I ignored the feeling, the worse it got. My eyes drifted away from the ceiling almost on their own. Her face was pressed up against the window beside the couch, staring down at me with the same gaping smile. Drool dribbled down her lips, leaving 2 long streaks down the glass. I didn't know how long she'd been there, but something told me she'd been there quite a while, possibly all night.
If you like scary stories, grab a snack. These are Mexico Legends Short Version Part 1. The Corpse Bride Mannequin in Chihuahua. This legend is very well known of this mannequin in a wedding dress. A daughter of a store owner decided to wear a dress for her mom's store. On the day of her wedding, she was stung by a spider. Some say it could have been a scorpion. After she was stung, she passed away. The mother was hurt of her daughter's passing and decided to preserve the body of her daughter, putting it in her store. Many people have claimed to have seen the mannequin move her eyes, opening her eyes and also closing her eyes. Even people have seen her smile. It is believed if you buy a wedding dress in this place, it will ensure you a very good marriage. The Island of the Dolls in Mexico City. This legend is also very well known in Mexico because the dolls are hanging everywhere. The legend has it that a man named Juan found a body of a lifeless girl in a canal and buried her there. But the spirit of this little girl would appear around the island, so he decided to put a doll altar for the little girl and hang around 1,000 dolls around the island for the little girl. Years later, the same man would be found drowned, just like the little girl, in the same place where he found her. What do you guys think? Have you guys heard about the Doll Island?